Hi everyone, welcome to this video. Today, we're going to talk about some ways to improve your listening skills and score higher marks in your English listening test.
So the English Paper 4 is divided into 4 different parts. Part 1 and Part 2 consist of multiple choice questions. Part 3 is matching the speakers, and Part 4 is filling the gaps. First of all, let's take a look at some general steps to follow when you are answering your listening test. Before the audio is played, you should first go through, read the questions and answers, as well as label or circle the important words or points. When the audio is playing, you should listen carefully to the audio and write down important points. After the audio has been played, only then should you choose the correct answer. Let's take a look at Part 1. Part 1 consists of multiple choice questions in 7 situations. These are 3 questions in Part 1. Now, I want you to pause this video, read the questions and answers, and circle the important points. Ready? Now, I will play the audio, and I want you to listen very carefully and write down important words.
SPM Listening Practice 1. Part 1. Questions 1 to 7. You will hear people talking in 7 different situations. For questions 1 to 7, choose the correct answer, A, B or C. You will hear each recording twice. Answer all questions. Question 1. You will hear a teenage girl, Amy, talking about her acne problem.
When I was growing up, I'd never thought I'd suffer from acne. Now, at 17, I'm seriously considering seeing a dermatologist about my problem. When I have breakouts, I tend to pick on them, which I know doesn't help the problem. As a result, I have a lot of pigmented acne scars on my cheek. I'm using vitamin C to try to treat them, but it's working very slowly. I have tried using other products too, but they have failed to help clear my skin.
Question 2. You will hear a teacher informing his students about a competition.
The essay writing competition will take place next week in conjunction with the 3R campaign. You are to write an essay in not less than 350 words. You will be given an hour to write your essay. As the theme is based on the environment, you may start doing your research now so that you will be prepared for the competition. The actual topics will be given on the day of the competition. The top 3 winners will receive attractive prizes as well as certificate of participation.
Question 3. You will hear an announcement by a flight attendant.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now approaching Tokyo where the local time is 9 a.m. Please be in your seat with your seatbelt firmly fastened. Ensure that your seat back and folding trays are in their full, upright position. Take note that all electronic devices including laptop computers and mobile phones must be switched off. The flight attendants are currently passing around the cabin to make a final compliance check.
In the second question, the teacher mentioned that the number of words of the essay should be more than 350 words. So that is the information given to the students, while the topic of the essay is only given on that day and the prize items are not mentioned. In the third question, the audio is most likely played before the flight lands because it mentioned that the plane is approaching Tokyo. So the answers are C, B, and C. Now let's move on to Part 2. Part 2 also consists of multiple choice questions. But in this case, it is only one situation, but 8 questions. I want you to pause this video again. Read the questions and answers, and circle the important points. Ready? Now I will play the audio. Listen carefully and write down the important points.
Part 2. Questions 8 to 15. You will hear Amanda talking about what she witnessed as she was walking home today. For questions 8 to 15, choose the correct answer, A, B or C. You will hear each recording twice. Answer all questions.
I was walking home on my usual route today. Both my friends, who usually accompany me, had reached their homes. So I was alone. There were just about 2 blocks more to go. As I was walking, I noticed an old lady in front of me. She had a heavy basket of groceries. Her purse was wedged under her arm. She was trying to walk as fast as she could as it had started to drizzle.
Now let's take a look at the answers. For question 8, Amanda mentioned that she was walking home. For question 9, she also mentioned that her house was 2 blocks away. For question 10, the audio mentioned that the old lady has groceries, so she was probably coming from the supermarket. The answer is A, B, and C. Did you get them correct? Now, let's move on to part 3. Part 3 consists of 5 questions for you to match the speakers. Now, I want you to pause this video again, read the questions, and circle the important points for each of them. Ready? Now I will play the audio for part 3. I want you to listen very carefully to the audio and write down the important points or words for speaker 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Remember, do not choose the answers first.
Part 3. Questions 16 to 20. You will hear 5 short extracts in which friends are talking about scams. For questions 16 to 20, choose from the list A to G what each speaker says. Use the letters only once. There are 2 extra letters which you do not need to use. You will hear each recording twice. Answer all questions. Speaker 1.
There are so many scams these days that it's hard to keep track. But I'm especially aware of scams that occur over the phone where the caller would try to get our personal information and bank account details. They can be very convincing, but whatever you do, never reveal anything about yourself to strangers who call you out of nowhere.
Speaker 2.
I used to get quite a number of calls telling me that I have won something, or there is an uncollected parcel at the post office for me. What's funny is, I never even entered any contests or ordered anything online. It's very annoying. These days, whenever I received a call from an unknown number, I immediately cut the line off. It saves me time.
Speaker 3.
The newspapers are full of stories of how scammers have successfully cheated the public. I think it would do us well to learn from these people's mistakes. Take note of the modus operandi so that we are aware of the different types of scams and how we can avoid them. We need to read and update ourselves about this.
Speaker 4.
Although it is possible to falsify one's personal information and credentials these days, it is still better to do a background check, especially if you want to purchase products or start an investment. Verify their companies, look at the reviews, especially negative ones. and ask around if anyone has ever dealt with them. Furthermore, make sure the products or investment that they are offering is legal.
Speaker 5.
I think it is also important to make a report if we have been scammed or have been contacted by a scammer so that the authorities are aware of it. Keep a record of all documentation and then report to the relevant enforcement agencies. It is our responsibility so that others won't fall into the same trap.
That's the audio for part 3. Now let's take a look at some important points that each speaker has mentioned. So speaker 1 mentioned that she has been receiving phone calls from people asking for personal information and that they are very convincing. Speaker 2 also mentioned that she has gotten calls of unknown numbers and she chose to cut the line off. Speaker 3 mentioned that he has been reading scams on the newspaper and that we should learn from mistakes and take note of the modus operandi. We should also always update ourselves. Speaker 4 mentioned that we should do a background check to verify the companies and also check bad reviews. Speaker 5 mentioned that we should make a report and keep a record. So now I want you to match some of these points with the ones in the question. You can choose to pause this video to do this. Now I will reveal the answer. Ready? So first, for Speaker 1. Speaker 1 mentioned that he has been receiving calls asking for personal info and that they are very convincing. So, in the question, F. Many people tend to believe the scammers because they can be very persuasive. So persuasive is actually the same meaning as very convincing. So the answer for Speaker 1 is F. Speaker 2 mentioned that she has been receiving calls from unknown numbers and that she chose to cut the line off. So let's take a look at the choice B. Do not answer calls if you do not recognize the caller's number. So this actually matches the statement mentioned by Speaker 2. So the answer for Speaker 2 is B. Speaker 3 mentioned that he has been reading scams on the newspaper and that we should learn from mistakes. So let's take a look at the choice E. Read up on people who have been scammed so that we can avoid making the same mistakes. So this clearly matches the statement mentioned by Speaker 3. Let's take a look at Speaker 4. Speaker 4 mentioned that we should check bad reviews. Take a look at A. Take note of negative reviews when purchasing a product. So negative reviews is basically the same as bad reviews. So this matches with Speaker 4. For Speaker 5, we should make a report and keep a record. Let's take a look at D. Ensure that you have proper evidence when you make a report. So this clearly matches with the statement mentioned by Speaker 5. So the answers are F, B, E, A, and D. Did you get them correct? Now let's take a look at some traps. So this is the main reason that I prevent you from choosing the answer when you are listening to the audio. Take note of this. For Speaker 3, he mentioned that we should take note of modus operandi. But in the question C, it mentioned that most scammers use the same modus operandi. So despite they use the same word, modus operandi, but the idea is different. So the answer for Speaker 3 is not C. So you should actually avoid making immediate decisions when you are listening to the audio. When listening to the audio, write down the important points first, and then after the audio has been played, then you make the correct choice. Now let's move on to part 4. Fill the gaps. So the steps in part 4 is quite different from the ones before. Before the audio is played, you should first read the whole passage, label the important points, and predict the answers first. When the audio is playing, listen carefully and write down your answer. Now let's take a look at this question. I want you to pause this video, read this passage, circle the important points, and predict what can be the answers for each of the gaps. Okay, so notice the words I circled in red. Those are the important words that will determine whether the answers are in singular form or plural form. And the blue words are actually the answers that I predicted. Those are not actually the real answers yet. So now I'll play the audio. I want you to listen very carefully and write down your answers.
Part 4. Questions 21 to 30. You will hear a travel blogger, Kim Andrews, talking about her passion for traveling. For questions 21 to 30, fill in the missing information in each numbered space. Use no more than one word for each space. You will hear each recording twice. Answer all questions.
Could you start by introducing yourself and what you do?
Well, my name is Kim Andrews and I am a travel blogger. I've been blogging about my travels in my personal blog, Kim the Nomad, since I was a teenager. At first, it was just a hobby, but since my blog became very well received, I decided to become a travel blogger full time after finishing college.
What made you start blogging?
I have been living in different parts of the world since I was young, thanks to my father. He works in the oil and gas industry, so he has been transferred to many countries over the years. Whenever we moved, I felt like living in each country was a different experience, so I decided to write about it and share with the others.
Do you mind sharing which countries you have lived in so far?
Before I started school, we lived in the UK. Then I spent my primary school years in Dubai and Azerbaijan, and my secondary school years in Japan and Norway. I then went to college in New Zealand. Sometimes my parents would take me and my sister traveling during the holidays too. I think I've visited over 20 countries now.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
It is, but it also has its fair share of challenges. Learning a new language can be difficult, and it's hard trying to make new friends if you don't know the language. You also have to try and adapt to a new culture and way of life. That is why in my blog, I try to share as much as possible about the local culture, as well as the do's and don'ts of each country, because you don't want to make a grave mistake.
What are some of the surprising things you learned abroad?
Well, we all know that Japan is one of the cleanest places in the world, right? Because of that, I thought there would be trash bins everywhere, but it's actually difficult to find a trash bin in the city, which means you just have to hold on to your trash until you see one. This level of discipline is so admirable to me. Also in Britain, they push back their clocks in the summer and push it forward in the winter. This is because daylight hours are much longer in the summer, and so they want to enjoy as much daylight as possible.
That's interesting. What are some of the advantages of traveling?
Traveling teaches you about so many things. It teaches you about the world, about your homeland, about others, and about yourself. You learn about different cultures and appreciate the differences with your own culture. You become more independent and tolerant. You will gain new insights and experiences, and you will see the world differently. It is an enriching experience.
That's very true. Lastly, any tips that you'd like to share with other travelers?
I'd say it's good to do some research before you visit the country. It will help you to understand the location, the culture, food, and so on. Learning some basic phrases in the local language is useful too. Most importantly, travel with an open mind. Some countries may be vastly different than what you're used to, and that's the beauty of traveling. It takes you out of your comfort zone so that you can experience new things.
Thank you for the interview, Miss Andrews, and we wish you the best.
Okay, so that's the audio for part 4. Have you written down the correct answers? Let's take a look. Have you noticed how I just cut out the blue words? that I predicted and write down the correct words, that's exactly what you should do during the exam. So before you are listening to the audio, you should first predict the answers for each gap. And then, when the audio is played, listen very carefully for the possible words that can be filled in the gaps. And if your prediction is wrong, then just cut out the words that you have predicted and write down the correct answers in the gap. Let's take a look at the general method that we should use when answering our listening paper. So first of all, read the questions and answers before the audio is played. This is because you want to get a general understanding of what the question is asking. And of course, read the answers so you know what to listen to when the audio is playing. Because sometimes the audio can be very long, and some of the points are important and some of the points are not important. So reading the questions and answers prior to the audio playing is very important for you to get a general understanding so that you know what to listen to when the audio is playing. Label or predict. You should label the important points when you are reading the questions and answers. So next, listen and write down the important points. Listen very carefully to every word the speaker is saying. And of course, you need to write down the important points while you are listening. This is because you will forget some of the important things if you do not write down. Listen and write down the important points first. After the audio has been played, only then you choose the correct answer. So what's the takeaway point? First of all, get enough rest before the exam. Sleep is very important to make you energized so that you can be more focused when you are listening to the audio. So get enough rest before the exam. Next, practice listening to English conversations by watching English videos without captions. You can actually practice watching YouTube videos or English movies without looking at the captions. This can train your listening skills as well. Next, read the questions before listening. Once again, reading the questions is very important so that you get a general understanding of what the question is asking for. And the last thing is, of course, use the 5-step rule. Read and label, listen and write, and then you choose the correct answer after the audio has been played.
So that's all for English Paper 4 listening test. I hope you learned something from the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube channel, follow our pages on Facebook, Instagram and Xiaohongshu. Lastly, I wish you all good luck for your SPM.